the Great Sphinx has been watching us for thousands of years. Silent. Unmoving. And yet, it feels alive. Every day, tourists stand in front of it, take photos, and walk away believing they've seen everything. But the truth is far more unsettling. Because what you see above the sand may be only a fraction of what exists below it. The Sphinx was already ancient when recorded history began. By the time the pyramids were being studied by early scholars, no one could say for certain who built it, why it was built, or what knowledge was lost along the way. Even its true age is still debated. Official history tells us it was carved around 4,500 years ago. But weather patterns etched into its body suggest something else. Deep erosion marks. Rounded features. Signs of prolonged rainfall. Rain that Egypt hasn't seen in over 10,000 years. That single detail alone changes everything. Because if the Sphinx is older than we are told, then it was built by a civilization we know almost nothing about. A civilization capable of carving a single monument from solid bedrock. A civilization that may have left something behind. Ancient legends speak of hidden knowledge buried beneath the Sphinx. Rooms. Passages. Vaults sealed away from time. Some texts describe a hall of records. A place where the history of a lost world was stored. Not myths. Not stories. But records. For centuries, these ideas were dismissed as fantasy. Too convenient. Too dramatic. Too dangerous to consider seriously. Until technology changed the conversation. In the modern era, scientists began scanning the ground beneath the Sphinx. Not digging. Not damaging. Just listening. And what they found was disturbing. Anomalies beneath the stone. Hollow spaces where solid rock should be. Geometric shapes that do not occur naturally. Voids. Spaces. Something intentionally carved. The Sphinx, it seemed, was not just a statue. It was a marker. A guardian. Standing watch over something hidden below. But every time questions were raised, they were met with silence. Research paused. Access restricted. Reports buried. Why? If there is nothing to hide, why has exploration stopped again and again? Some believe the answers are political. Others say religious. Others still believe the truth would be too destabilizing. Because if hidden chambers exist beneath the Sphinx, then history is incomplete. And if those chambers contain knowledge from a forgotten age, then our understanding of human civilization collapses. The Sphinx doesn't speak. But its silence feels intentional. As if it's waiting. Waiting for the moment when we finally ask the right questions and are brave enough to face the answers. Long before scanners and satellites existed, people sensed something wasn't right beneath the Sphinx. Not because of science, but because of patterns. Early explorers noticed it first. Small cracks near the base. Openings that seemed too deliberate to be natural erosion. Shafts sealed with stone plugs. Some were documented. Others were quietly filled back in. Over time, many of these details disappeared from public records. But the ground itself remembered. When modern researchers began studying the plateau more carefully, they noticed inconsistencies. The limestone beneath the Sphinx behaved differently than expected. Vibrations moved through it unevenly. Sound waves bounced back in strange ways. Areas that should have been solid responded as if they were hollow. That's when serious questions began. Using non-invasive methods, scientists started mapping what lay beneath the monument. They weren't searching for myths. They were looking for density changes. Natural faults. Anything that explained the anomalies. Instead, they found geometry. Straight edges. Right angles. Depths that matched no natural cave system. These weren't random gaps. They were organized. Placed. Measured. One scan revealed a large rectangular void beneath the Sphinx's left paw. Another suggested a tunnel-like structure extending deeper into the plateau. The data didn't scream mystery. It whispered intention. And whispers are harder to ignore. At first, officials dismissed the findings. Natural formations, they said. Limestone can erode unpredictably. But the explanations never fully matched the data. The shapes were too clean. Too deliberate. Then came the restrictions. Access to raw scan data became limited. Further studies were delayed. Permissions stalled. Some teams were told their work was complete, even though they believed it had barely begun. That's when suspicion grew. Because if these anomalies meant nothing, why stop investigating them? Independent researchers tried to fill in the gaps. They compared old maps, early photographs, and forgotten notes from 19th century excavations. Slowly, a pattern emerged. Many early reports hinted at underground features that were never fully explored. Some even described sealed entrances. One report mentioned a stone doorway beneath the Sphinx that was no longer accessible. Another described tunnels that were intentionally closed. These weren't fringe claims. They came from respected explorers of their time. And yet, none of it was followed up. The sand returned. The stone was patched. The questions faded. But the clues remained. What makes this unsettling is not just the evidence itself. It's the consistency. Across decades. Across different teams. Across different technologies. Different methods. Same result. Something is there. And whatever it is, it was hidden on purpose. As the clues beneath the sand continued to stack up, one thing became clear. The Sphinx was not built in isolation. It was part of a larger design. A system. One that extended below ground as much as above it. But seeing beneath the surface was only the beginning. Because the next phase of discovery didn't rely on intuition or old maps. It relied on machines that could see what humans never could. When machines replaced shovels, everything changed. For the first time, researchers didn't have to guess what lay beneath the Sphinx. They could see it. Not with their eyes, but with instruments designed to read the invisible. Seismic waves. Ground-penetrating radar. Microgravity sensors. Tools sensitive enough to detect the smallest void beneath solid stone. And the results were impossible to ignore. As waves were sent through the limestone, they returned unevenly. Some areas reflected sound immediately. Others delayed it. That delay meant space. Empty space. Not cracks. Not fractures. But cavities large enough to walk into. One scan, then another. Different teams. Different years. Different equipment. The data kept pointing to the same conclusion. There were hollow chambers beneath the Sphinx. Not one. Several. One anomaly appeared directly beneath the body. Another near the paws. A deeper one extended toward the plateau, as if connected to something larger. The shapes were consistent. Symmetrical. Deliberate. Technology doesn't believe in legends. It only measures. And it was measuring something engineered. Researchers expected controversy. What they didn't expect was how quickly the conversation would stop. Reports were released, then quietly withdrawn. Press briefings were cancelled. Follow-up scans were delayed indefinitely. Some scientists spoke openly at first. They described what the machine showed. They said the anomalies deserved excavation. That answers were within reach. Then the tone changed. Suddenly, the same findings were called inconclusive. The voids were labeled natural. Access to the site tightened. Permissions vanished. And the technology that revealed the anomalies was no longer welcome. That silence spoke louder than the scans. Because technology had done what myths never could. It had provided evidence without interpretation. And that evidence pointed to something intentionally hidden. What unsettled researchers most wasn't the presence of chambers. It was their placement. They weren't random. They aligned with key features of the monument, as if the Sphinx itself was built around them. A guardian. A marker. The technology didn't reveal what was inside those spaces, only that they existed, and that someone long ago had gone to great lengths to conceal them. Some believe the chambers were sealed to protect knowledge. Others believe they were sealed to prevent discovery. Either way, the act of sealing suggests awareness. Intention. Fear, perhaps. The machine showed us the doors, but they couldn't open them. And that's where the mystery deepened. Because once the scans proved the chambers were real, the next step should have been obvious. Excavate. Explore. Understand. Instead, the opposite happened. The more clearly technology revealed what lay beneath the Sphinx, the harder it became to study it. As if the closer we got to the truth, the more resistance appeared. And that raises a troubling question. If technology can see the chambers, and ancient builders clearly knew they were there, why are we still standing outside? Because the next part of this story isn't about machines or measurements. It's about words. Ancient words that warn something was hidden there long before technology ever existed. Long before machines scanned the stone, the ancients were already whispering about what lay beneath it. Not in myths meant for children. Not in legends exaggerated over time. But in texts written with purpose. Carefully. Often cryptic. As if the writers knew these words would one day be read by people not meant to fully understand them. One of the most controversial is a set of inscriptions attributed to ancient Egyptian priests. These texts speak of a hidden place beneath the Great Sphinx. A chamber of records. A sealed space meant to protect knowledge from a coming catastrophe. They didn't describe it as a tomb. They didn't describe it as a shrine. They described it as a repository. A place where information was stored, preserved, and intentionally hidden until a future age. Some texts refer to it indirectly. They talk about the place of silence. Others call it the house beneath the guardian. The wording changes, but the implication remains the same. Something was placed below the Sphinx, and it was meant to outlast civilization itself. What makes these writings unsettling is how precise they are. They mention alignment with the stars. They reference underground passages. They speak of seals that should not be broken until the time of return. This isn't poetic language. It reads like instructions. Even more disturbing are the texts that warn against disturbing what lies below. They don't describe curses or divine punishment. Instead, they speak of imbalance. Of knowledge revealed too early. Of consequences not for individuals, but for the world. That detail matters. Because fear-based myths fade over time. But warnings rooted in responsibility endure. Later Greek historians also recorded strange claims. They wrote that Egyptian priests told them the Sphinx was already ancient even in their time. That it had been built by people who lived before the last great flood. That beneath it lay records of civilizations destroyed by water and fire. Plato echoed similar ideas. He spoke of advanced societies erased from history. He mentioned Egypt as a keeper of memories that others had lost. He never named the Sphinx directly, but the connections are hard to ignore. And then there's the silence. Official Egyptian records say almost nothing about the Sphinx's purpose. Kings love to carve their names into stone. They love to take credit. Yet no inscription proudly declares, "I built this." That absence is suspicious. It suggests the builders weren't rulers seeking glory. They were caretakers preserving something older. Something not meant to belong to any single dynasty. As centuries passed, the stories became fragmented. Priests were replaced. Temples fell. Languages changed. But the idea of something hidden beneath the Sphinx never disappeared. It survived conquest. It survived religious shifts. It survived time. And when modern technology finally hinted that these ancient texts might be telling the truth, the reaction wasn't excitement. It was restraint. Because if the texts are even partially correct, then the chambers beneath the Sphinx aren't empty. They were never meant to be. They were designed to hold something humanity was not always meant to possess. And that brings us to the most unsettling possibility of all. What if the reason the chambers remain sealed isn't because we can't open them? What if it's because someone believes we shouldn't? The ground beneath the Sphinx was never meant to be silent. For decades, scientists assumed the limestone plateau was solid, ancient, unchanging, a monument carved from one continuous mass of rock. But that assumption began to crack the moment modern instruments touched the sand. It started quietly. No drills. No explosions. Just sensors. In the late 20th century, researchers used seismic technology to study erosion around the Sphinx. The goal was simple. Measure how water had shaped the stone. Estimate its age. Nothing more. But the data didn't behave. When sound waves were sent into the ground, they didn't travel evenly. Some areas absorbed vibrations. Others reflected them back too cleanly. Too sharply. As if they were bouncing off empty space. That shouldn't happen under solid limestone. The readings showed anomalies. Large ones. Rectangular voids beneath the Sphinx's pores. Symmetrical. Deliberate. Not natural caves carved by water or time. Engineers recalibrated their equipment. They ran the tests again. Different angles. Different frequencies. The results stayed the same. There were hollow spaces beneath the monument. Then came ground-penetrating radar. Unlike seismic scans, radar paints images. Shapes. Edges. Depth. What it revealed was even more unsettling. Beneath the Sphinx lay straight lines. Flat ceilings. Sharp corners. Geometry that nature does not create on its own. These weren't cracks. They weren't faults. They were rooms. One scan suggested a chamber directly between the Sphinx's pores. Another hinted at a tunnel running deeper toward the Giza plateau. The layout felt planned. Designed. Hidden with intent. And then something strange happened. The data stopped being shared. Some scientists were suddenly removed from projects. Others were told their work was inconclusive. Funding shifted. Permissions were revoked. Public statements softened. What had once been described as significant anomalies became natural features requiring further study. But the raw scans didn't disappear. Copies circulated quietly. Researchers spoke off the record. Engineers hinted that they had seen more than they were allowed to discuss. That some readings went deeper than expected. Much deeper. Deep enough to suggest the Sphinx was not just a statue. It was a marker. A lid. What makes this even more disturbing is the precision of the voids. They are positioned where ancient texts said they would be. Aligned with celestial markers. Placed beneath the guardian itself. That coincidence is hard to dismiss. Technology does not interpret myths. It measures reality. And reality was showing something that history had denied for centuries. There was something beneath the Sphinx. But access was never granted. No excavation followed. No controlled entry. No camera sent below. The official explanation was preservation. That drilling could damage the monument. That the risks were too high. That sounds reasonable. Until you remember that tunnels have been dug all over Giza for centuries. That shafts already exist beneath the plateau. That exploration happens everywhere else. Except here. The technology revealed the impossible. And instead of opening doors, it created silence. which raises a question no one seems willing to answer out loud. If these chambers are empty, why not prove it? And if they aren't, what exactly is being protected? Long before modern scanners revealed hollow spaces beneath the Sphinx, ancient voices were already whispering about what lay below. These were not tourist stories, not legends meant to entertain. They were warnings. One of the oldest references comes from the Cairo papyrus, fragments of which describe a hall beneath the Guardian where knowledge of the first time is sealed. The language is strange, not poetic, technical, almost instructional. It speaks of measurements, of alignments, of chambers cut before the desert existed. Even more unsettling are the writings attributed to Thoth, the god of wisdom. In later Greek translations, Thoth is described not as a myth, but as a teacher who arrived after a great destruction. He speaks of a hidden archive placed beneath a monument that watches the horizon. Many believe this is the so-called Hall of Records. Mainstream archaeology dismisses it as symbolic, metaphorical, a story layered with myth. But the details don't behave like metaphors. The texts describe precise locations. Beneath the forepaws, beneath the right shoulder, along a path aligned with the rising sun at the equinox. These are not vague directions. They are coordinates. Even stranger is that some of these writings reference events that shouldn't have been known at the time. A catastrophic flood, a shifting of the earth, the loss of an advanced society that existed before dynastic Egypt. According to these texts, the chambers were sealed deliberately, not hidden out of fear, hidden out of responsibility. The knowledge inside was described as dangerous, too powerful for a civilization not yet ready to understand it. That idea appears again and again in Hermetic writings, in early Arabic histories, in accounts recorded centuries before modern Egyptology existed. They all speak of guardians, of watchers, of stone sentinels placed not to honor gods, but to protect something buried. What makes this deeply unsettling is the consistency. Different cultures, different eras, different languages, same location, same monument, same warning. Even medieval historians writing under Islamic rule describe tunnels beneath the Sphinx. One account tells of explorers entering a passage and never returning. Another mentions doors sealed with stone that could not be moved, as if fused by time itself. These stories were eventually labeled superstition. Conveniently. But when modern scans show voids exactly where ancient texts said they would be, coincidence starts to collapse. There is also the problem of age. Some of these writings suggest the Sphinx predates Egypt itself, that it was already ancient when the pharaohs arrived, that they inherited it, restored it, and claimed it. If that is true, then whatever lies beneath may not belong to Egyptian civilization at all. It may belong to something older, something erased. And that raises a deeply uncomfortable possibility. What if the reason excavation is forbidden is not to protect the Sphinx, but to protect the timeline? Because if chambers beneath the Sphinx contain records of a civilization that existed before recorded history, then everything we think we know about human origins would collapse overnight. The ancient texts don't say the chambers are empty. They say they were sealed until the world was ready. The question is no longer whether these stories are real. It's whether we are being allowed to test them, and whether someone decided that we are still not ready. For centuries, the ground beneath the Sphinx was treated like sacred silence. No digging, no drilling, no questions that went too far. Then technology arrived. Quietly, carefully, almost by accident. In the late 20th century, researchers began using non-invasive tools to study the Giza Plateau. Not to hunt legends, but to understand erosion, stability, and structural safety. At least, that was the official reason. Seismic tomography was one of the first methods used. By sending vibrations into the ground and measuring how they bounce back, scientists could map what lay beneath the stone without touching it. What they found changed everything. Beneath the Sphinx, the vibrations didn't behave normally. Instead of solid bedrock, the data showed hollow spaces. Large ones. Rectangular ones. Not natural cavities. Not random cracks. Voids. One appeared beneath the forepores. Another along the right side. Exactly where the ancient texts pointed. The results were quietly acknowledged, then quickly buried in technical language. Anomalies. Density variations. Possible natural chambers. But not everyone accepted that explanation. Natural caves do not form with sharp edges. They don't align with cardinal directions. They don't appear symmetrical beneath one of the most precisely aligned monuments on Earth. Later studies using ground-penetrating radar added more detail. Flat surfaces. Sudden depth changes. Hollow zones with straight boundaries. Engineered spaces. What made this more disturbing was what happened next. Further scans were restricted. Permits were delayed. Access was limited. Results were filtered through committees before release. Some scientists spoke openly at first, then stopped. Others hinted at pressure. Funding quietly disappeared. Careers stalled. Officially, the concern was preservation. Excavation might damage the Sphinx. The structure is fragile. The monument must be protected. But here's the problem. Egypt has approved invasive excavation at countless other ancient sites. Entire temples have been dismantled and rebuilt stone by stone. Tunnels have been dug beneath pyramids. Chambers have been opened with far greater risk. So why is the Sphinx different? Why are voids beneath it treated as untouchable? One explanation is structural fear. That digging could destabilize the monument. Another explanation is political. That discoveries beneath the Sphinx could rewrite history in ways that are inconvenient. But there is a third explanation, rarely spoken aloud. That what lies beneath was never meant to be open casually. Some internal reports, never officially published, describe the chambers as sealed intentionally. Not collapsed. Not filled. Sealed. One document mentions stone interfaces inconsistent with natural geology. Another references possible artificial closures. If that is true, then someone built doors beneath the Sphinx. And doors exist to protect something. What's more unsettling is the timing. Modern scans confirmed what ancient texts described thousands of years ago. Not approximately. Precisely. Same locations. Same depths. Same warnings. At that point, the story stopped being mythology. It became evidence. Evidence that something is there. Evidence that we know it's there. And evidence that someone decided we shouldn't go any further. The Sphinx still watches the horizon. Silent. Immovable. But beneath it, the ground is no longer quiet. And once a secret is detected, it never truly disappears again. At some point, every mystery reaches a moment where silence becomes louder than facts. The Sphinx has reached that moment. Because after all the scans, the restricted access, the quiet reports, and the sudden caution, one question refuses to go away. Why seal the truth beneath a monument built to endure forever? If the chambers are empty, there is no danger in opening them. If they are natural, there is no risk in proving it. If they contain nothing of value, there is no reason for fear. Yet the resistance remains. And that resistance tells us more than any scan ever could. Some researchers believe the chambers were not created by the builders of the pyramids, but by a civilization far older. one that understood stone, astronomy, and time on a level we still struggle to match. A culture that may have existed before the last ice age, before the deserts formed, before history was reset. If evidence of such a civilization were found beneath the Sphinx, it would collapse the timeline we teach today. History would not begin with the pharaohs. Civilization would not rise gradually. Human knowledge would not follow a neat, upward path. It would suggest something far more uncomfortable. That advanced knowledge was lost. That humanity has fallen before. And that what we call ancient might actually be a shadow of something much older. Others believe the chambers contain records. Not treasure. Not technology. But information. Stone libraries. Encoded knowledge meant to survive catastrophe. A message preserved through disaster, waiting for a future civilization capable of understanding it. And then there are the oldest ideas of all. That the chambers were never meant for us. Ancient Egyptian texts describe the Sphinx as a guardian. Not of a tomb, but of knowledge. Knowledge tied to cycles. To destruction and rebirth. To a time when the world resets itself. If that knowledge exists, opening the chambers prematurely might not just rewrite history. It might change how we see our future. And that is where things become truly unsettling. Because modern society is built on a specific story. A story of progress. Of continuous advancement. Of being smarter and more advanced than anything that came before. What happens if that story is wrong? What happens if the Sphinx proves that ancient humans understood the world better than we do now? Perhaps that is why the chambers remain sealed. Not because they threaten the monument, but because they threaten us. So the Sphinx remains untouched. Watched by cameras. Studied from a distance. Scanned, but never opened. Known, but never acknowledged. A silent agreement between the past and the present. That some doors stay closed. That some truths are too heavy to lift all at once. And that history, like the desert, hides its deepest secrets in plain sight. The Sphinx has endured empires, religions, and revolutions. It has seen humanity forget and remember itself again and again. And it is still waiting. Waiting for the moment when we are ready to ask the right question. Not what is beneath the Sphinx, but are we prepared for what it might tell us?